Whether you're deploying Windows Server 2016 to physical computers or deploying to virtual machines on a Hyper-V host, Windows has a number of tools to help you configure, update, manage, and deploy installation images. As you have seen, deploying a few servers is a straightforward process. But if you have dozens or hundreds of servers to deploy and maintain, you'll want some tools to help automate and manage the process. This video covers the following topics for Windows image deployment. We will discuss WDS, we will talk about working with WDS images, we will discuss updating those images, and we will talk about managing images with PowerShell. Windows Deployment Services, or WDS, is a server role that facilitates installing Windows OSs across a network. With WDS, you don't need to have installation media ready and sit at the server console as Windows performs the usually uneventful tasks of the OS installation. In addition, you can configure many OS properties such as computer name and IP address before you even deploy, and it is basically saving time for you. WDS in Windows Server 2016 can deploy the following OSs. You can deploy Windows XP, Server 2003, Vista Service Pack 1, Server 2008 R2, Windows 7, Windows Server 2012 R2, Windows 8 or 8.1, Windows 10, and finally Windows Server 2016. Before you get into details of installing and configuring WDS, we need to review some key terms. What you have on the slide right now starts from Pre-boot Execution Environment, or PXE. PXE is a network environment built into many network interface cards that allow a computer to boot from an image stored on a network server, which is referred to as a network boot, rather than from local storage. During network boot, PXE sends packets to the network looking for a WDS server to send it an installation image. PXE uses Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or DHCP, to acquire an IP address, and Trivial File Transfer Protocol, or TFTP, to transfer data. Image file. An image file contains other files. Much like a zip file contains multiple files in WDS, an image file is a boot image or an install image. A boot image contains the Windows PE defined in the next bulleted item that allows a client computer to access a WDS server so that it can access an install image. An install image contains the actual operating system being deployed to the client computer. A discover image can be used to boot a client computer that can't use PXE, usually from a CD or a DVD or a flash drive. A capture image is a special boot image that creates and installs image from a reference computer. WDS supports three image file formats: .wim, .vhd, and .vhdx. Files with the .wim extension are Windows imaging format files. The most common image file type used by WDS and the method for storing installation files on a Windows installation DVD. VHD and VHDX files are virtual disk formats also supported by WDS, but their use in WDS is not covered in this video. Windows Pre-installation Environment, or PE, is a minimal operating system that has only the services needed to access the network, work with the files, copy disk images, and jumpstart the Windows installation. Windows PE also has a command line interface that can be used for troubleshooting startup problems or recovering from a damaged operating system installation. When you boot Windows Server 2016 or Windows 10 into recovery mode, you're booting it into Windows PE. Windows PE is used in boot image for remote installation with WDS. Multicasting is a network communication method for delivering data to multiple computers on a network simultaneously. It's used in WDS when the same installation image should be sent to multiple computers on the network at the same time. Multicasting reduces bandwidth use more than unicasting does because with unicasting you have to send data across the network separately for each computer that should receive it. With multicasting, data is sent once and all the computers are going to receive the data along with the configuration that they need to assign to themselves. As discussed before, a computer with PXE compatible network interface card has the capability to boot from the network rather than local storage. This is called a network boot. A computer with PXE compatible network interface card performs a network boot in the following situation. 1. The computer does not have an OS installed on the local hard drive and there is no bootable media inserted into any of the removable devices. 2. The BIOS or UEFI is configured to attempt a network boot before attempting to boot from local media. 3. The F12 key is pressed during computer startup but before a locally installed OS boots, which initiates a network boot. And also, we have to understand that the bootstrap program WDSNBP.com is a WDS component that a WDS client downloads when performing a network boot. It contains basic instructions on how to perform a network boot operation, such as whether F12 must be pressed to continue to the network boot and which file to request from the WDS server. The WDS server role doesn't stand on its own. It requires several support technologies on the network. Windows Server 2016. WDS is also available in Windows Server 2008 and 2012, but these requirements apply to installing the role on a Windows Server 2016. Active Directory. Microsoft introduced a standalone option for WDS that doesn't require Active Directory, but installing it on a domain controller or member server is recommended and provides the most features. DHCP server. A DHCP server must be available, ideally, on a Windows server. Having WDS and DHCP on the same server requires fewer configuration steps because some required DHCP options are configured automatically when WDS is installed. DNS server. Part of the WDS process in an Active Directory environment requires user authentication from the client computer. A DNS server is needed for the client to locate a domain controller. Even in a standalone WDS implementation, DNS is required for name resolution. PXE compatible network interface cards. A PXE compatible NIC on WDS client computer isn't a strict requirement because client computers can be booted to a Discover image, but using PXE is preferable. If you are deploying Windows to a Hyper-V virtual machine, you must use a legacy network adapter for Generation 1 virtual machines. However, you can use a standard or synthetic network adapter on Generation 2 virtual machines since they support PXE boots starting with Hyper-V running on Windows Server 2012. Suitable storage. An NTFS volume with enough free space for storing boot and installation images is also required. You can install WDS like most Windows Server roles by using Server Manager or PowerShell. The real work begins after the role is installed. WDS is a complex server role and has numerous configuration options and associated tasks. In Server Manager, you install the WDS role as you do any other role. In the Role Services windows, you're prompted to install the Windows Deployment Services tool, and you have the option to install those. You also can install two role services, both selected by default: Deployment Server and Transport Server. Deployment Server. This role service provides full WDS feature and depends on the Transport Server role service to function. In most cases, you install this role service. Transport Server. This role service provides necessary services for Deployment Server, but it can be used without Deployment Server in advanced deployment environments such as those without Active Directory and DHCP. In addition, Transport Server supports image multicasting, that is, deploying install images to multiple computers on the network. You can also install WDS role in PowerShell. To do so, you will use the following command in the PowerShell: install Windows Features WDS. And when you hit enter, the installation process is going to start and WDS will be installed on your computer. By default, this command installs the necessary features and both role services that we discussed. So by the end of this installation, you will actually have a ready WDS service in place with all the tools and features needed for it. When it is done, you're going to receive this message asking you to restart the server after installation process, which means you successfully installed the features. So I will go ahead and restart the server. And I'll log back in. And we are ready. Now is a good time to talk about the WDS install configuration. After WDS is installed, the Management Console is added to the Tools menu in Server Manager, as you can see it right over here. Before you can use WDS, you must perform initial configurations. Okay, go to the Tools on the top, and then look for Windows Deployment Services over here and launch the management window. And if you open this one, you're going to see we have the server, the DC1 that we already installed the WDS on. Click there. And as you can see, it says Windows Deployment Services is not configured. The server is not configured. To configure the server, right-click the server and click the Configure Server. So let's do that. We right-click and we click on the Configure Server, and we arrive at this page over here. So read the messages carefully and click on Next. Here, Windows gives you the choice of installing WDS integrated with Active Directory or as a standalone server. The default option in Active Directory integrated installation is recommended if your network includes Active Directory. With this option, you can pre-stage client computers by creating computer accounts for them in the Active Directory. Pre-staging enables you to do a basic unattended installation by specifying the computer name, selecting the boot, and install image for a client, and define what they should receive. And then finally joining the client to the domain. You can also specify which WDS server a client should use when more than one server is on the network. In addition, you can specify that only pre-staged client can access the WDS server, thereby enhancing your security. So for now, let's choose the first option and click on Next to arrive at this window where you decide where to store boot and install images, Pixie boot files, and WDS management tools. Install images can be quite large, so be very careful. You need to choose a folder on an NTFS formatted volume with plenty of free disk space. By default, this folder is C remote install, as you see already is selected. For the best performance, you shouldn't choose the system volume. Remember, if you choose C, basically all the bandwidth on the hard drive may be consumed while the installation and any type of usages of WDS is happening. If you do, a warning message will be displayed recommending that you choose a folder on a different volume than the root volume. This is a virtual machine and we only have just one partition on it. As long as you understand this is not a good practice, I'm going to leave it the way it is and click on Next. And as I said, the warning pops up telling you that the volume which you selected is also the Windows system volume. And for burst performance and data reliability, the remote installation folder should be stored on a separate volume. Of course, I know what's going on, so I'm going to say yes, I want however it is. So click on yes and continue to the next page. If DHCP is installed on the server, you see a window where you configure how DHCP works with WDS. There are two options in that menu. First option is do not listen on DHCP and DHCP v6. Select this checkbox when the WDS server is also configured as a DHCP server. This option tells the WDS server not to listen on UDP port 67 to avoid a conflict with DHCP, which uses this port to listen for client IP configuration requests. The next option there would be configure DHCP options for proxy DHCP. If the DHCP server installed on the WDS server as Microsoft DHCP server, this checkbox should be selected so that the WDS configuration wizard automatically configures DHCP to forward Pixie requests to the WDS server. If a non-Microsoft DHCP server is in use, or if DHCP is configured on another server, proxy DHCP must be configured manually. If Microsoft DHCP is running on the same server as WDS, both options should be selected. This situation is not applicable to the server that we are working on, and that's why after we click Next, we don't see those two options and we land on Pixie server initial settings. Okay, let's look at the options that are available here to us. Do not respond to any client computers. This option essentially disables WDS, an option you might want to choose until you have finalized WDS configuration. The other one is respond only to known client computers. With this option set, WDS responds only to pre-staged clients. This option is more secure because it prevents a raw computer from attempting to acquire and install image, but it requires more upfront configurations. And the last option is respond to all client computers, known and unknown, and WDS responds to all clients that attempt a Pixie boot, whether they are pre-staged or not. If this option is set, you can choose whether administrator approval is required before WDS responds to unknown computers, and unknown clients requiring administrator approval are placed in the pending devices node in the WDS management console. I will just let it be do not respond to any client computers yet and click on next. And as you can see, it basically goes through, finishes configuring my WDS, and right now it's telling me this computer is not currently joined to any domain, which is true. So I click on finish, and at this point I'm going to need to restart the computer, which I will do it. Okay, and of course this is a planned restart. I'll log back in and After that, I'm going to go ahead and start the WDS service. Remember that all the settings that we already applied to WDS could be changed in future if need be, and they're not set in stone. Now that you're familiar with WDS server role, it is time to turn your attention to working with WDS images so that you can begin performing remote installation. Images are the heart of WDS server role. Boot and install images along with the client that has a Pixie compatible NIC allow an administrator to install an OS remotely on a computer that has neither an OS installed on its disk nor locally bootable media. You can use WDS images customized for your environment, the stock OS installation, or combination of both. A boot image contains Windows PE and Windows Setup, which client computers uses to select and download an installation image and begin the OS installation. The boot image used in WDS contains the same code on a Windows installation DVD that a client computer boots from when performing a local installation. The main difference is that with WDS, the installation image is loaded across the network, allowing many installations to occur at the same time without requiring multiple copies of the installation medium. Adding boot image is really the first step in working with images because without one, you can't boot clients from the network. After a boot image is configured, you can do testing of your WDS setup. In most cases, you should use the boot.wim file on the Windows Server 2016. A capture image is a specialized boot image used to capture the state of an OS already installed and configured on a reference computer. A reference computer is like a prototype where you have installed an OS, made configuration changes, and installed some applications. It serves as the model for other computers. You then boot the reference computer to the capture image and capture the OS and applications to an install image that's applied to other computers. You create a capture image in the WDS Management Console using an existing boot image as a template. Before you boot the reference computer with the capture image, it must be prepared with sysprep. Sysprep resets system identifiers and other information unique to the computer, such as computer name. In most cases, when you run sysprep in the Windows System 32 sysprep folder, you should choose the following options: Enter System Out of the Box Experience, or OOBE, Generalize, and Shut Down. Before using the sysprep, make sure the latest version of sysprep is there and installed on your computer. The OOBE option causes the computer to start the usual startup mode, allowing users to perform initial configuration tasks. The Generalize option removes the unique identifiers on the system. They are created the next time the system boots. This option also clears system restore points and deletes event logs. The shutdown option causes the target computer to shut down after sysprep is finished running. You can also choose reboot, but the shutdown option makes sure your WDS server is ready and you can be prepared to press F12 to do a network boot. If you miss the network boot, your target system boots into Windows and you need to run sysprep again. One caution when using capture image on the target computer is there must be enough space on the target to store the resulting install image. A network drive also can be used, but it isn't recommended because a failed network link can cause image corruption. Install images, unsurprisingly, contain the data and instructions for installing an OS. You can use the stock install image on Windows installation DVD, or you can create an install image with reference computer and a capture image. The install.wim file on a Windows installation DVD might contain multiple installation images. For example, a Windows Server install WIM might contain four images, standard and data center editions in both the server core and desktop experience versions. While adding the image to WDS, you can select which edition and version you want to include. When you use the standard install.wim image on the installation DVD, the installation experience is the same as though you booted the client to the installation DVD. The only difference might be the choices of which OS to install. When you boot to installation DVD, you see all the installation choices on the DVD. However, when you configure the install image with WDS, you can limit which choices the person attending the installation sees. When you configure an install image in WDS, the image must be added to an image group. An image group is just a container where you can organize images with common properties. For example, you can create an image group for Windows Server 2016 install images and one for Windows 10 install images. You can also group images according to which users should have access to them. You can create an image group before adding an install image or by using the Add Image wizard. You can make changes to images after they are created. For example, you have created an install image with several customizations and installed applications, and you don't want to go through the same process each time a patch or service pack is released. With deployment image servicing and management dism.exe command, you can update an image with patches, drivers, hotfixes, and service packs without having to recreate the entire image. The dism.exe can be used on an offline image that you have mounted by using dism/mount-wim or an online image if you include the /online switch. It can also be used to display information about an image. As a typical example of using dism.exe on an existing image, say you have created a Windows Server 2016 custom install image from a reference computer. After creating the image, you learn that Microsoft has published a hotfix containing a security patch for the DNS server role service. You plan to deploy DNS on several servers that will use the install image, so including the hotfix and the install image is critical. There are 5 distinctive steps that you need to take. First, take the image offline by right-clicking it in WDS and clicking Disable. Then right-click the image again and click Export Image. Note where you place the exported image and the name you gave it. The other step is to create a folder where you will mount the image. Mounting an image is like mounting a drive, making its content available as though they were just files and folders on a disk. Then use the command line and apply the hotfixes. Next step is use command line again and commit the changes to the .wm file and dismount the image. And finally, the last step is replacing the image in WDS with the new image and enabling it. As with applying hotfixes and patches, you can enable and disable features in an existing image by using the dism.exe command. To enable a feature in an image, it must be taken offline and mounted first. You can also use PowerShell to manage the images. Here on the slide you can see some examples of the commands which are available to you for managing WDS and the images.